Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Glad you found it. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about something that is very highly sought after, but very misunderstood, and that's love. You know, in today's world, people confuse it with feeling. They confuse it with convenience, surface level action. Is that really what it is? Let's talk about it. All right, guys, so let's compare what today's world says about love versus what the Bible says love actually is. So, babe, you know, people think love is what?
A checklist.
A checklist?
Yeah, people think it's a checklist. People think that, at least for, Christians, right? If they do what the Bible commands them to do, right? This is not really too much on the worldly kind of love, but just in the love of doing what the Bible tells you to do. They do it, and it's like, okay, I did it today, right? So it becomes like that, but it's not what the Bible says, right? It's based on the opposite of that. And I would look at other ways how people would sit there and express love, right? They think because I buy you something, or because I give you something, or because I do something for you is love. Is it an act of kindness? Yeah, it could be. But is it sincere? Are you asking for something back, right? Is it something that you're doing for approval? If it's something that you're doing because you want attention or anything like that, that's not love.
Or they think of it like as a way of resolving a conflict, or not resolving it, but like avoiding it. Like they want to avoid a conflict, right? And it's sad because at that point it's very surface level, like we just talked about. It's something that they just no, and it may not even be their true intention, like what they really feel. They in a way, when you do stuff like that, you kind of like lie to the person, right? Just so that you don't have a problem with this person. But that's not okay, right? That's kind of weird. I mean, whether it's seeking approval or even doing things just so that they get liked. You know what I mean? It's just another thing. I've seen when people, they have a desire, like such an earnest desire that they want people to like them so much that it's like they almost do anything and everything for this person or people or whatever the case is. And I guess that kind of ties in with the approval thing, but it's still like, wow, like I did this, do you like me? And another thing, guys, that biblical love is, it's with the intention of making the choice, right? It's an intentional choice to reflect God's nature, God's character. Biblical love or true love, we find that in 1 Corinthians 13.
1 Corinthians 13, verse 4. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It's not puffed up. Does not behave rudely. Does not speak its own. Is not provoked. Thinks no evil. Does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in all truth. Bears all things. Believes all things. Hopes all things. And endures all things.
That is beautiful. And the thing is, like, you can even hear it in the list. It's sacrificial. It has nothing to do with me. Biblical love or true love is really making the conscious decision to express God's nature or God's character, also looking outside oneself, right? Because I can sit here and tell Melinda all day, I love you, honey. I love you. I love you. Right? But what am I showing forth with that? Am I doing stuff to, like, am I simple stuff, by the way? And a lot of people won't think of this. They'll probably think of this as like, oh, this is just a responsibility anyway. But in reality, am I helping her with things around the house? Am I, taking care of the kids while she's doing something else, or while she's taking care of the kids, am I doing something to help her in that sense? Am I just doing things just because, in the sense of, and when I say do things, I mean like positive things that would bring joy to you, right? Or things that would bring, like, that would make you smile, or just whatever. It doesn't have to be romantic. Let's be real here. It doesn't have to be anything romantic. It's just simply you caring about the other person more than you caring about yourself, just for a moment.
I'll say let's go through some of the lists. I mean, if you really, just look at love does not suffer long and is kind, but love does not envy, right? So if you're jealous of somebody, It's not love.
Yeah.
Right? If you show any kind of jealous, or even, in your actions, you're not loving because
Right.
you're jealous, right? You should be happy that somebody has something, not be upset because you don't have it, or be jealous because you have it. Or, oh, I wish I had that. I can't believe you get something like that. Why would God bless you with that, but he wouldn't bless me? Things like that people may think or say. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up. Being prideful. Right, exactly. And I know, there's certain things, at least in my own life, that I noticed. And I'm not a prideful person, but I just noticed that it was starting to become that. And I'm like, that's not me. That's not okay. And it's not love, right? As it does says, obviously, we do not act rude towards one another. And a lot of people, at least from our past experience, if somebody, that went through something and they go back and treat somebody else wrongly, that's not love. According to the Bible, that is not love. Whether somebody treated you wrong, you don't treat them the same way. And I know we're probably all guilty of that, but you don't go to the next person and treat them wrong because somebody else treated you wrong, or because you went through something, and because you went through it, now you don't, I guess, know how to act or whatever.
So guys, here's the thing. Like, as Melinda was just talking about, like, you can hear the difference of what true love is versus what the world thinks love is. True love, it's not about how we feel. It's not what's convenient to me. It's not what helps me, right? It's not that. And sure, somebody could say, oh, well, that's elementary stuff you're talking about. Yeah, sure. We could sit here and say, oh, that's elementary. But do you do it?
Right. Yeah.
There's a point where knowledge is good. Knowing is good. But living out in your own, as your life as an example, that is what's most important.
I mean, you could sit there and know something by reading it, but do you really know it if you haven't took action into it? Absolutely not.
Right, because then you have no conviction of anything. You can't take action if you don't have a conviction. So, with love is probably the most convicting thing in existence. The reality of how love operates versus what people think. It's happy for others rather than self.
Exactly.
Regardless of what knowledge we have, regardless of what what experience we have, if you get all these different experiences, right? But if you don't love, it's all for nothing.
Right. A lot of times I don't want to get up and do that. Somebody's asking for help. I'm like, I really don't want this. You're now you're all about self, and there's many different ways of self. And as this is probably a little off topic, but I remember listening to this blood witch doctor, or not doctor, she's like blood witch or something like that. Anyway, she was talking about like the new age stuff is all about self.
Oh, I remember that.
And how like demonic that is. And then it's the opposite of who God is. It's opposite of his character. So it's like, oh yeah, that's something that none of us should have. Like, that's not even the characteristic of the Father. And the world teaches us about yourself, your self emotions, everything about self.
Yeah, it's all about do what's best for you, right? Now, in a sense, I can understand where that kind of has some application, but if that's like the main focus, then it's wrong. I heard a phrase. I can't remember who said it, man, but it was so good. No one is ever made poor by giving. And this might tackle a little bit of the money pocket, okay? The wallet, it's gonna attack the wall a little bit. And so but it's true though, because the more the more you give, the more you can receive back. Because the thing is, if you hold on to everything you have, there comes to a point where you can't receive anymore. Well, I kind of feel like we experienced that even recently.
I'm guilty of that, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's not because of, it's more of, I think, the way I grew up, really, right? What do you call that? The life, like the struggle life, I guess, however you want to word it. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the right word, but it's just, you hold on. I was taught. It was like, you hold on to every little penny, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen. So, and it's trying to break those things that we had learned, right? Because I didn't grow up in this way, that the way the Bible speaks. I grew up the opposite of that. Not fully, but some of it, right?
Yeah.
So with that, it's like, okay, I have to have my back of my mind, and I need to sit there and like, no, that's not what God says. He doesn't say hold on, because he's the one who gives. And we have experienced it. He literally gives us at the last minute.
Absolutely.
So, anyways.
Yeah. No, that's good though.
That's good. Absolutely. So yeah, so there's the one with anger, obviously. Like if you think evil or anger towards somebody, right? If you think, oh, God told me, I have heard crazy stories. God told me to go out there and kill so and so. Well, that's not God, apparently, right? That is not his characteristics. That's not what it says in the
And
Bible.
that's not love.
And it's not love, right? So, and even when it talks about what one of the 10 Commandments, when it talks about, do not kill, right?
Yeah.
That talks. It's not literally going out there like literally physically killing somebody.
Actually, it's funny you bring that up because the word there actually isn't kill; it's murder. That's what that's talking about. No, do not murder.
Well, let's look back at verse 1.
Okay.
And it says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. It's huge.
Yeah.
Right? It's basically saying you could do all these things. And the one that really got to me was where it says, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains, but have not love. Right? I mean, even, I remember who it was, you might know, but when the person was like, well, I did this and this and that in your name. And Jesus is like,
Jesus.
I don't know you. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like, if you do anything according to this, anything that's of God, right? Or you have all the knowledge or all these, whatever it is that you have, but you do not love, you do not have the characteristics of the Father, it's done for nothing. Absolutely nothing. It profits nothing. It does not produce, right? What is it producing? It's not, it's dead works, really. I mean, you're doing works, yeah, but to me, it's kind of like dead works because you're doing it for nothing.
Right.
I mean, you're doing it to, if you pray for somebody to get healed, they're going to get healed because God does love.
Yeah.
But what is it doing for you if you don't love them?
I mean, it's making me think of like, it's making me think of like when you do works, like you're saying, and, there's impact, right? There's impact that you have, that your works will have on people's lives, but then the impact may seem good, to the outside world, but in reality, just in that small little sphere of your life, of your influence, of where you stand, it's really not anything at all, because it's you've impacted your community, but then when people look back at, well, why did Melinda do what she did? Well, maybe maybe she just loves everybody, or maybe she's just a really nice person, or maybe maybe she felt like it was something she felt she had to do. But, and as inspiring as those things may be, if there's no love, people are gonna, if they were to figure out that you were just this miserable person, you hated everybody, they're gonna look at that as like, oh, I guess we were wrong. So why did she do all this? Probably just so she can build a name, or have some kind of renown or something like that, and that's just terrible. When you think about it. It's sad.
Yeah. And I would say, even just for my own experience, I have done stuff, where I was doing it, like we said earlier, about a checklist, right? I was doing it like, check, I did it, just because that's what we have to do. And if we don't do it, then it's like, then you're not showing that you're actually doing the will of the Father. And, but the thing was, it was all done wrong. I mean, I shouldn't say all of it, but, there was times where it was done wrong, because it became, I have to do this because I'm taught that the word says, which it actually does. It says that if you do not do these things, is sin, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah, you're talking about where it says, to him that knows to do good, but does it not, to him it is sin. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But, and again, this is just me. I'm not speaking on everybody else's behalf. But, I had that in the back of my mind, like, if I don't do this, then I'm sinning, right? So it was like that sin conscience. And instead of like, because this is the characteristics of Father that he now embodies in me, these characteristics should be showing, right? When people see us, they should be seeing for the Father, not us. It's not about us, right? We just talked about that, right?
It's not
nothing is
our
about us.
reputation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it had became where it's like, okay, I'm doing this, or because if I don't do them, I'm considered a sinner, or I'm doing this because I have to make sure I do my list, right, and make sure that it shows that I'm actually doing something. Because if not, then I'm looking like a not walking in the will of the Father, or anything like that, which is wrong. It's wrong. At least, again, this is my life. It's not everybody, but to me, it was just wrong. I'm like, okay, I need to check myself, right?
Yeah.
So this is not something like, okay, guys, like we walk this out perfectly. Absolutely not. And this is why it's important. And we feel that it's important to bring this out because I'm sure it's not just us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and when I have read 1 Corinthians 13 again, and I'm like, oh, whoa, and it's been a while since I read 1 Corinthians 13.
Yeah, and and it's funny because 1 Corinthians 13 is oftenly used at weddings.
Yeah, we use it.
In our wedding.
We use it. I think I even gave you like a little like puzzle, right? A little like necklace that had like
that was the verse on it.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Was it?
I think it was.
Oh.
I'm gonna have to look for that, right?
Exactly. To see. Yeah, this is funny. Another thing too is when you're talking about doing stuff, even ministry, like you can do ministry, but you're not necessarily loving.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
What was that thing you said the other day? You said even if you're doing ministry, or if you're it was something about like even if you're going out, healing the sick and all that stuff, doesn't mean that you're loving the Father, and doesn't mean you're doing it in love either.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. I was watching someone specifically YouTube, and that was introduced to me, and I was like, when I told you, I was like, babe, I don't know about this person. Like something's missing, something's off, and then that's when I receive its love. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, and then I started justifying. I'm like, well, you have to be able to love. Mm-hmm. In order to do all these things, in order to sit there and go out there and heal the sick and raise the dead and do all these things.
I do remember that.
I'm like, you have to be able to love. So they have to love. Yeah. But if, and that's when I read this, I'm like, wait a second. I was wrong. And what I heard could have been right. I mean, I don't know the person personally, but I'm just making a point that I don't know, but I did hear that.
Another thing that comes to my mind is, where does love start? That's a question that I have come to my mind. I'm like, where does love start? And really what it is love starts from loving God first. Jesus talked about that where they questioned him about the greatest commandment, which is the greatest commandment. And he answered correctly, which was loving, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength, all your might. And then he goes on to say, and the second is just like it. You love your neighbor as you love yourself. So the whole thing is, and it's funny because I feel like this part is also preached oftenly and is talked about, but I feel like there's a connection there that maybe isn't always made, if that makes sense. And when I saw this, I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's different, because I was thinking pretty much the same way as most people would think about that scripture, but then I was like, oh, wait a minute, no, there's something deeper here. It starts with loving God first. So in order for anybody to love anybody accurately and correctly and in the form of true love, it has to start from your love with God. Right? And so even for us as a couple, the only way I can truly love you, like to the full extent of what love truly is, I have to love God first. Mm-hmm. And then it channels down to our love, as a couple. It's the same thing with anybody, and going back to what you're saying about when people are out there ministering, whether it's healing the sick, casting out devils, whatever, and or even just other things where you're volunteering things, if you're doing it out of like outside of love, like not in love, then there's a problem. You're doing something just because there's other motives, basically. Mm-hmm. And if there's another motive as to why you're doing these things, that's not okay. Your number one motive has to be love. And I think I've been saying it for the past couple of days here at home, like the goal of our instruction is to love. As Christians, the goal of our instruction is to love. Scripture says that. That's literally what it says.
Yeah. And it just makes me think, and I could be wrong, so you're more than welcome to correct me, but it just makes me think of like a child, right? A child who wants to receive love from their parent, and they'll come, right? They got hurt, or they just feel some kind of worldly emotions, I guess, right? They'll come and seek a parent for love, and then, once you love them, and then you cuddle them or whatever, whatnot, and then when they leave off your arms, they're happy and they're joyful, and they're going out there, and they're not, acting in anger or upsetness, or whining, or any of that kind of stuff. So it makes me think of when we go to the Father, right? Well, in a sense, you're talking about, loving the Father first, but when we go to the Father and we're just getting poured in his love for us, right? We're talking about more intimacy with the Father.
Right.
And we're getting poured with his love. What do we have to give? What are we giving?
Right.
Love, right?
Right.
In order to sit there, even to give it, we have to receive it in that sense, right? Think about a child, when they receive it, they go and they leave happy. And it's like, when we receive from the Father, it's like, because we're having that intimacy, and I know it's a different topic, but we're having that intimacy relationship with the Father, and he's pouring love on us, and now we have love to give to the world. And we won't even sit there and even think about, or we shouldn't, but basically, like, these other actions that it talks about, we wouldn't even give that, because we just got poured down with the love of the Father, and now that's what we have to give. But we're not receiving. What are we giving? If we're receiving from the world, what are we giving? Right? So I think that's, again, this is a little different, but that's the importance of having that intimacy with the Father.
Yeah.
And be able to receive from the Father, so that you could give what you receive.
Yeah. See, that makes me think of Pastor Dan Moeller, because I love Dan. He's just the happiest guy in the world, from what I can tell. But it's so funny, because like I remember him saying, like, if I'm not with Jesus, then I don't have anything to give anyone.
Yeah.
Like, that's powerful, man. That's like, wow. If you're not with Jesus, then you have nothing to give to anyone.
You're empty.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not filled with anything, right? You're filled with emptiness,
right?
Void. Right?
And it kind of makes me think too, like, like, and maybe you guys, maybe you can question yourselves with this, like, okay, so like, you have a prayer life, okay, you're praying, you're spending time with God. What is your prayer life for? Let's ask ourselves this question. Let's see if the answer comes out as to be filled with him. Now, some people would be like, oh, well, of course, obviously. But ask yourself, when you're spending time with God, are you doing it because you feel like you have to, or are you doing it because it doesn't feel like a chore to you still? That kind of thing.
A checklist.
A checklist thing, yeah.
Should never be that.
Right. Or are you reading the Bible so you can have something to talk about or to teach on? Or are you genuinely spending time with God because you love God, and because you love God and the time you spend with him, you get filled with him?
The thought I just had is, if you hold on of stuff, what does God has to give? You're depending on what you have instead of depending and trusting the Father, who gives because he loves.
Right.
Goes back to love. He loves us that much that he is willing to give. He gave his whole life to us. I mean, come on, seriously.
How much more would he give you? Because he already gave you the breath of life.
We have his inheritance. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, that is big. Wow, babe, that was good.
God.
Babe, another thing I just thought about too, this kind of goes a little bit back to when you were talking about ministering, and whether you're doing it in love or out of love, or whatever, how you said that. First thing that it says is that love is, when you look back at 1 Corinthians 13, the first thing it says that love is patient. Why is that? The first thing that comes to my mind is, in order for you to be patient, you have to be willing to yield. You have to be slow to speak, quick to listen. You know what I mean? And then from there, then it says the next thing it says that love is that it's kind, right? So that's the action part, that's the behavioral part of love. And so a lot of times people will do things like, they'll say it's a kind act, but sometimes they do it not because that they're doing it love.
Actually, it's kind of real fast. So it makes me think, like, because he said love is patient. If you don't have patience, what comes with that? Anger, right? Bitterness,
Yeah.
If you think about, like, I don't have time for this, or, I'm sorry, like, whatever. Or, you're cutting somebody out instead of just listening to them, right? So, like, and then, what was the next part you said? sorry.
Talking about the kindness, like
The kindness, right? So
it's the actional, like the behavioral part of love. Yeah.
right. When you're patient with somebody, how's your character coming out?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you're sitting there, like you say, you're yielding, you're listening, you're hearing what they have to say before you chime in and say something, or so basically you're acting out in kindness. So anyways, it's just a thought. I just thought it was interesting how it started off with, and I'm not saying that it has to be in that order, but it's just interesting how it went from being patient.
Yeah.
And then, because if you're patient, you're going to act in kindness.
Right.
If you're out of patience, you're not going to act in kindness.
Yeah, and see, that's kind of. I think you're right though. Like you said, that it doesn't have to be in that order. I think it does actually, because when you think about it, if it says that that the first thing that love is patient, and and patience is basically, like it says about being slow to speak and quick to listen and this and that, and you're willing to yield in that sense. So I feel like it does have to be in that order, because in reality, if it's in that order, think about it. You are setting yourself aside. You're emptying yourself right now, and you're just listening to what the person is telling you, right? So if you're doing that, I feel like it would have to be in that order in order for you to act in
Makes
love.
sense. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Love is not measured by the size of your ministry. It's not measured by how many miracles you see. It's not measured by all these things that you do. Love is truly measured by your intimacy with God. Like what we were just saying earlier, what does your prayer life look like?
Yeah.
Are you getting with God so you can just preach out of the Bible, or are you getting with God because you genuinely love God and you just want to be with him, and therefore he is able to fill you with all of himself? So friends, don't confuse activity for intimacy. Don't confuse ministry for love. It's totally possible to do all those things without love, and that's not what you want. And you can go and do all these other things and not have an intimate relationship with the Father. But that's what he wants the most. He wants that intimacy with you. Okay? So just something to bear in mind. Let's measure our lives based on what Scripture says that love actually is. Let's make sure that we are actually walking these things out in love, right?
And also, I would just want to clarify the fact that, when we sat there and said, when we talk about the commands, because God did have commanded us stuff, but we're not saying not to do the commands of God, right?
Right. No,
we're just basically sitting there saying that make sure that, check yourself, make sure that you're doing it out of love, the love that what the Bible talks about, right? Not the worldly love. Just make sure that you're doing it in that, instead of just doing it because we're commanded. Also, if you think about it, when, like David just said, when you have the intimacy with the Father, you're naturally, and also when you're born again, right? He now abides and lives within you. You're naturally just gonna flow in that way. It won't be a mindset, oh, I have to go do this because it's commanded. It's naturally gonna flow out of us because he abides and lives in us, and that is his nature. His nature now lives in us, and our nature will be his nature, right? So anyways, just wanted to make sure to clarify, we're not saying not to do the commands of the Father. We're just saying, just make sure that you love the Father and love people. And that's more, that's the first commands. And all these things, I would say, will follow.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to be doing them for nothing.
Yes.
That's the whole
which is
thing
not
there.
good.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, again, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Really appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss anything. And yeah, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Love you. Be blessed. See you soon.
Bye, you guys.